At 4:01 a.m., my phone lit up with 33 missed calls from my wife. The last thing Maggie had sent was 4 words: "Don't come home tonight." I called her, voicemail. I called my son Ryan, his phone was unavailable. I called my daughter Diana, 4 rings, then that polished attorney's voice telling me to leave a message. By 4:44, I was turning onto Maple Street, and my house was surrounded by police cars. Yellow tape crossed the porch I had built with my own hands. A young officer stopped me. "Sir, you can't go in. That's my house. Where is my wife?" He glanced toward an older detective and said quietly, "He has no idea what she just did." Detective Sandra Reyes stepped forward. "Your wife is safe. 2 men forced entry through the rear door at 2:07. Both are in custody." Inside, my kitchen had become a crime scene. The back door I installed in 2019 hung crooked from a splintered frame. Evidence markers crossed the tile. A folding knife sat inside a plastic bag. Then I heard Maggie's voice. She was on the living room couch in her grey cardigan, a blanket around her shoulders. The moment she saw me, her face gave way. She crossed the room and hit my chest so hard I staggered. "They came for you," she said against my shirt. "They knew you weren't home." When she could speak steadily again, she told me about the man who had arrived at 6:20 the previous evening. He knew my name, my schedule, and that I was staying at a hotel in Westchester. He warned her that 2 men would come after midnight looking for company documents. Visible police would only redirect them toward me. "Why didn't you call me?" I asked. "And what would you have done?" "I would have come home." "Exactly. Then they would have had 2 targets, and I only have 2 hands." That was when I began to understand what my wife had done. Maggie had spent 25 years in emergency medicine. Fear and composure had learned to exist inside her without interfering with each other. After the stranger left, she stood at the front door for 90 seconds and built a plan. She called Detective Reyes, who placed plainclothes officers around the block in unmarked cars. No visible police presence. Maggie added Reyes as an emergency contact, so an iPhone SOS signal would become the trigger. Then she turned off every light and waited behind the kitchen island. At 1:47, she texted me, "Don't come home tonight." At 2:07, 2 men forced the back door. They did not search like burglars. One walked directly to the alarm panel and entered the correct code. Only Maggie, Ryan, and I knew it. The other moved straight to the hidden file cabinet behind the bookshelf. Then they went to the concealed safe in my office, the safe Ryan had watched me install. Maggie understood the truth before she had time to feel it. Someone inside our family had given them the map. A flashlight found her on the stairs. "There she is," one man said without surprise. They had been told she would be home too. The taller man ordered her to open the safe. Maggie told him truthfully that she did not know the combination. He made her call me. Instead, she held the side and volume buttons for 3 seconds and sent Reyes the SOS signal. "He's not answering," she said. "Let me try again." 90 seconds later, officers entered through the front door, back door, and side window at the same time. One intruder dropped, the other threw up his hands so quickly his flashlight hit the tile. Only after they were handcuffed did Maggie's body begin to shake. The 33 calls started at 2:17. They were not cries for rescue. The danger was already contained. She was reaching for the man she had spent the entire night protecting. 48 hours later, Reyes showed me what police found on the intruders' phones. One carried the knife, making the break-in first-degree burglary. The other received 4 calls while the crime was in progress. Reyes slid the call log toward me. I recognized the number because I had programmed it into my daughter's first phone when she was 16. Diana had called 4 times while 2 armed men stood inside my house with her mother. Then my lawyer, Thomas Hale, uncovered the second door into my life. 3 weeks before the break-in, Ryan and Diana had filed an Article 81 guardianship petition claiming I suffered cognitive decline and could no longer manage my affairs. A second document gave them broad power of attorney over my property, finances, and company. It carried my signature. Almost. I didn't sign this. "I know," Thomas said. "It's forgery." The petition was legally sophisticated. Ryan could not have prepared it. Diana could have, but the structure pointed toward her husband, Marcus Webb, a real estate attorney who had spent 7 years at my holiday table asking careful questions about my company. The break-in was one door. The courtroom was the other. If the men stole the original company documents, Marcus could use the forged power of attorney. If they failed, the guardianship case was already moving. I called Diana. She said they were trying to keep the company in the family after my retirement. "You signed papers declaring me incompetent." "That was Marcus's idea." "You called those men 4 times while your mother was alone with them." Her answer broke something in me. I'm sorry it happened this way. Not sorry for what she did, sorry for how it landed. My oldest friend, retired Detective Eddie Caruso, had been quietly tracing Marcus for 6 months. Public records revealed an 18-month plan. Ryan had a gambling problem. His debt began around $60,000. Marcus introduced him to a private poker operation, connected through shell companies to Marcus himself. By the time Ryan owed $340,000, Marcus offered to erase it in exchange for help with a family transition. Ryan gave him the alarm code, the layout, the safe location, and my schedule. He signed documents he did not read because he trusted his brother-in-law. He was not innocent, but he had been used. Diana was different. She was a lawyer. She understood what she signed. The guardianship hearing was 4 weeks away. I drove to the first building I had constructed on Jamaica Avenue and thought about the 200 people who had built Callaway Construction with me. Then I called Thomas. Convert the company into an employee stock ownership plan. I want the employees to own all of it. That's permanent. That's why I'm doing it. Thomas filed the declaration of intent that day. Even if my children won the guardianship case, the company would already be beyond their reach. At the hearing, the court evaluator testified that I showed full cognitive capacity. A neuropsychologist confirmed it. My financial records and the ESOP decision showed a man fully managing his affairs. Then Thomas called our neighbor, Carol Marchetti. For 20 years, Maggie had left homemade jam on Carol's porch every Christmas. That morning, Carol walked into court carrying a USB drive. Her security camera had recorded our house 14 days before the break-in. The footage showed Marcus and Ryan arriving together. Ryan carried a bag inside. 22 minutes later, he came out without it. Marcus followed carrying the bag. A bag containing the map of my house, my files, and everything I had built. Ryan watched himself on the courtroom screen and finally understood that Marcus had staged the meeting, recorded it, and made him part of a plan he had never fully seen. He stood. Your Honor, I withdraw my name from the petition. I also want to speak with the district attorney. The guardianship petition was dismissed. Ryan cooperated for 11 hours over 2 days. He admitted what he had provided and explained how Marcus manipulated him. Prosecutors concluded he had facilitated a felony without knowing the break-in was planned. He received 3 years probation and no prison time. I saw him once through an interview room window. He looked smaller, not physically, but like a man finally setting down something he had carried too long. When he stepped into the hallway, we stood 12 feet apart. He did not ask for forgiveness. He nodded. I nodded back. Marcus was arrested the next morning. As officers led him through the district attorney's office, he saw Diana and stopped. You told me he'd never figure it out, he said. You said your father was just an old man who didn't know what his company was worth. That was the sentence that finally broke me. Not the crowbar, not the forged signature, not even the 4 calls. My daughter had looked at the man who taught her to write her name and reduced him to an old man with assets attached. When I got home, Maggie did not ask questions. She put down her coffee, wrapped her arms around me, and held me in the same kitchen where she had held our entire family together. 1 year later, we no longer live on Maple Street. You can replace a door, but not the feeling that a house has kept you safe. Once that feeling is gone, you are living in a location, not a home. Callaway Construction completed its employee ownership conversion. Ryan now works for a small construction company in New Jersey. He texted me once. I'm sorry, Dad. I have not answered yet. Not because I never will, because I would rather say nothing than say something that is not true. Diana entered plea negotiations, involving a suspended sentence, community service, and the loss of her law license. That door between us is not closed, but it is not open either. Marcus faces trial for burglary, forgery, conspiracy, and coercion. The evidence he built to control my family became the evidence dismantling him, and Maggie still makes coffee every morning. For 40 years, I thought I was the foundation of my family. The load-bearing wall, the structure keeping everything upright. I was wrong. Maggie was the foundation. I was simply the man living inside the building, taking credit for the way it stood. Those 4 words, "Don't come home tonight," were never rejection. They meant, I see what is coming. I am going to stand between you and it. Stay where you are so I can protect you. The most important thing I ever built is not on Jamaica Avenue. It is in the next room making coffee. And here is where I failed. I believed silence protected my family. I hid problems, carried everything alone, and left an opening for the wrong person to exploit. Family betrayal does not always begin with a crowbar. Sometimes it begins when the people who watched you build everything decide they deserve it before you are finished. And sometimes salvation looks ordinary: a neighbor with a USB drive, a friend with coffee and a folder, a detective who listens, and a wife sitting in the dark, terrified down to the bone, still capable of doing what needs to be done.